The ancient world was full of mysteries. You've got stuff like Atlantis and the pyramids and Stonehenge and so on and so forth. In this video, we're going to cover some lesser known mysteries. We've got stuff like a perfectly preserved mummy in China, a city that was completely lost under a lake, kind of like Atlantis, and of course, a potential Stargate that serves as an interface to somewhere in outer space. Join me as we cover these and many more in this installation of the Ancient Mysteries of the World Iceberg series. We're going to start this one off with the Abakan Palace ruins. This is an ancient Chinese style palace that was found in the Abakan region of Russia. Now basically this means that back all the way in the Han Dynasty, so like 2,000 years ago or more, there were Chinese people in this area before it became, you know, Siberia and the USSR, Russia area, territory, stuff like that. Alright, here's the thing. This area was hundreds of miles away from actual Chinese territory and it belonged to their arch enemies, the Xiongnu at the time. Now we talked about the Xiongnu in a previous video, but basically these people were horse archers that were the arch enemy of China because they were coming in, they would bring all their thousands and thousands of horse archers, and you know that's basically why they ended up building the Great Wall of China, to stop the Xiongnu invasions, at least parts of it. So why were they building these palaces in enemy territory? The palace was pretty big. It had 20 rooms and a hall, and it was made out of mud for some reason. I guess that's how they built stuff back then, like the side walls were made of mud. Now this palace had Chinese style roof tiles that actually had inscriptions on them. These inscriptions were obviously from the Han Dynasty because it wasn't stuff that anybody in like the Xiongnu Empire would have written down, because it was praising the Han Emperor and stuff like that. Archaeologists found tons of ancient Chinese like artifacts, like jade stuff, gold stuff, basically everything that the ancient Chinese of that time had. Here's where the speculation comes in as to who actually built this. The Russian scholars and stuff that actually found this place speculated that it was an ancient general named Li Ling. This guy was most likely defeated by the Xiongnu and then defected to them as a result. Like maybe they made him join them so he didn't get killed or something like that. All his men didn't get killed. He led a force of 30,000 Han Dynasty troops into Xiongnu territory, and only 400 of them returned back after that whole fight and skirmish, whatever, and he was not one of them. Ancient rumor has it that he defected to the Xiongnu, and this would make sense. Basically, the story behind what happened would be that he got captured by the Xiongnu people over here and was held captive. 400 of his men go back, and then rumors spread that he was a defector. He wasn't actually a defector, but the Chinese emperor of the time thought that he was, so he tortured his family, and then word got back to the Xiongnu people that he had been having his family tortured. They told him, and as a result, he actually did defect. When he defected, he taught the Xiongnu troops how to fight the Han Dynasty, and it was actually really good for them, and it would make sense as to how this palace was built. That might be a totally tall tale, but who really knows, because it's really a cool story. The White Lady of Brandberg. The White Lady of Brandberg is a rock art painting located in Namibia, which is a country in southern Africa. It's located within Brandberg Mountain, which is more like a rock overhang. It's not like a full-size mountain for the most part, but anyway, that's where it is. It basically shows a white lady surrounded by darker figures, maybe hunters. Around the hunters, there's also some oryxes painted on there, which are basically like a species of antelope. Now, this painting dates back to around 2,000 years ago from ancient like sand art, which is a type of art in Africa. Alright, so this white lady is probably not a white lady in the way you would think it was. Like in southern Africa, there's not that many white people, or at least there weren't back then. A bunch of people obviously speculated that this was a white lady foreign visitor that came and they painted about her because it was rare to see a white person there. That's probably not what it was. It's most likely a shaman wearing white garments or something like that. It's also probably not even a lady. It's probably a dude. Most likely this was a shaman wearing body paint or some sort of white garments, but they were doing some sort of ritual with these oryxes and these hunters. In this Brandberg Mountain overhang type thing, there's like 45,000 paintings, so this is just one of them, but anyway, this was probably the most famous of all of them. Nobody knows exactly what this thing represents because it was 2,000 years ago in southern Africa, and nobody really knows anything about that, but anyway, it's pretty cool to look at. Just real quick, thank you guys for watching so much. You have no idea how much it means to me. If you're enjoying this video, hit that subscribe button. It helps me out more than you will ever know. And now let's get back into the ancient mysteries of the world. Xin Zhui. This was a Chinese noblewoman that was preserved as a mummy that dates all the way back to like the 200 BC era from like the Han Dynasty. She's one of the best preserved mummies ever. She was married to a very prominent guy, a marquis and a chancellor of somewhere in that area. I don't really understand how Chinese political titles work, but anyway, she was a noblewoman. She had money. All right, so I said that her mummy was well preserved. It was so well preserved that her hair and her blood is still there, which is insane. It's been over 2,000 years. Her mummy was found in 1971 on accident, but they found her massive tomb, and her massive tomb was absolutely full of stuff. It had wooden figures, it had tons of makeup, it had just other artifacts that you wouldn't even think would be there. Like, it just, oh, she was rich. It's said that her skin remained as soft as it was in life. Like, it is literally just the same as it was whenever she was buried. Her ligaments still bend. It's crazy. I don't even know how they preserved her that well. I don't think we could do that again if we tried. She was so well preserved that they went into her veins and found her blood, and they found blood clots. They found that her cause of death was a heart attack, and that was 2,000 years ago, over 2,000 years. That's crazy. She also had other stuff wrong with her. She had gallstones, she had high blood pressure, she even had a liver disease, so it was rough, but still, that's just wow. They found 138 undigested melon seeds in her stomach, so the last thing she ate was a melon. Now, I don't know about you, but I've always been told don't eat the seeds of a watermelon, so maybe that killed her. I mean, it probably didn't, but anyway. All right, so here's pretty much how she was preserved so well. She was literally Russian nesting dolled. Her body was buried within a wooden coffin. Then that wooden coffin was buried in another wooden coffin. Then that one was buried in another wooden coffin. And finally, it was buried in one more bigger wood coffin. There were layers to this to keep the oxygen and the moisture and everything else out. They pumped some sort of unknown liquid into that box with her body so that it would keep it moist and all that other kind of stuff. It had traces of magnesium in it, but we really don't know what it was. Now, her body did start to decompose as soon as we unsealed this mummy because oxygen got to it and stuff like that. So it's damaged a little bit now, but the fact that it was so well preserved, it's still better than most every other mummy ever, still to this day. So that's something. That's such a cool story, and I love this. Chinese Jade Bi. All right, so these Jade Bi are circular discs that were found in ancient China back during like the Neolithic period forward. That's like 3400 BC or so. These are decorative ornamental discs that were buried mostly with aristocrats. Now, because they're made out of jade, which is a very, very hard green stone that's very hard to work with, it's kind of confusing as to why they would do this in the first place. Their actual purpose back then is unknown to us, but they most likely symbolize like cosmological stuff or like wealth, something like that. Because of all the complication and all the expense that goes into making these things, it's thought that they might have been used in rituals during like the Liangzhu culture. The Liangzhu culture is kind of crazy. It's almost like they were an advanced civilization all the way back to like 5,000 years ago, whenever they were. All right, so here's how we find these things in these graves, and this might explain a little bit more to you. In these graves of these Chinese aristocrats, these jade discs are found above their heads, on their chests, and below their feet. There's got to be some sort of ritual to go to the afterlife or to guide them into the afterlife or to prevent the decomposition of their flesh or something like that. These discs basically encompass their whole bodies, you know, because it's above their head all the way to below their feet. We'll probably never actually know what they were used for, but they're really cool and really unique. These things were made with extremely complicated craftsmanship, like stuff that they shouldn't have even had all the way back then. Some of them even represent like scenes of dragons and just starry scenes, stuff like that. It's really cool stuff. We might not ever know the true purpose and the true reason behind them creating these discs, but they're pretty cool to study. Saudi Arabia Camel Carvings. In the northern part of Saudi Arabia, researchers have found 21 massive life-size camel statues, more like camel carvings, in the rock. These things date all the way back to 8,000 years ago, so like way before Stonehenge even. Alright, so there's 21 carvings, but only about a dozen or so represent actual camels, and there's some actual like horses or donkeys on there too. It's really cool stuff. Alright, so here's the speculation on how these carvings went down. They were carved using tools that were made of a stone named chert. This would have had to have been brought in from at least 9 miles away because there's no more chert anywhere in the area. As a matter of fact, it's speculated that these carvings were maybe made in like a nomadic tribe meeting place, so like a bunch of different tribes or something would come in and they would all camp there for a little while together and they would carve these. Each of these statues took 10 to 15 days a piece to make, so it's probably likely that it was a community effort, like everybody pitched in a little bit to carve this stuff. Some of these reliefs feature camels with like swollen bellies and other stuff related to fertility and pregnancy, so maybe these nomadic tribes met up together at this time of year to have their camels have their babies or something like that. Who knows? I think it'd be pretty cool if they all came together whenever the camels were about to calve or whatever you call it. I don't know if they're calves in camels, but anyway, if they wanted to take care of their camels together in this like hard season for their animals. That probably wasn't the case because people probably didn't actually have domestic camels back then. I don't think that happened until a lot longer than that after that, but who really knows? If they didn't have domestic camels, I don't really know why they would be carving camels because that just doesn't make sense to me. But anyway, let's move on. Sima de los Huesos. All right, let's go to the archaeological site of Atapuerca, Spain. In this location, 29 sets of humanoid type bones were found that are designated now as the Sima de los Huesos. They call them hominins, which basically means like a pre-Neanderthal type humanoid species. These things supposedly date back to 430,000 years ago. This set of bones makes up 80% of the fossil record for humans or humanoid type stuff in the middle Pleistocene era, whatever you call that. There's over 7,000 bones there, including a bastion human skull. There's DNA. There's a old stone hand axe. There's just all kinds of stuff. This site in Spain is like 100 feet below the surface. It's in like a cave complex. So quite literally, these people were cavemen. All right, here's a really funny part in this article I'm reading about these people. It says that these people were shorter, stockier, and smaller brained than normal humans. It says that they were like 5'7" and 170. So literally they are built just like me for real, especially the smaller brain part. There's one more part of this mystery to uncover. How did they get there? It may have just been a burial chamber. They may have just buried their dead in these caves or something like that. But there are a bunch of bones and fossils, stuff like that, from ancient animals of the time. There were bones from 175 bears found in this cave complex, as well as other smaller carnivores. There's a little bit of speculation that these people might have been thrown in there on purpose to be, you know, eaten or sacrificed to these carnivores, to these bears. But there's not enough evidence to really back this up because they weren't eaten to death, like they weren't physically damaged by these carnivores most likely. Except for the guy with the bashed skull. I don't know what was going on there. One last thing on this one because I really just want to talk about it. That stone hand axe that they found down there with all these bones, they named it Excalibur. At least the researchers named it Excalibur, which is really cool because it's like King Arthur's sword's name and all that kind of stuff. I'm just a nerd for anything medieval, and Excalibur is definitely that. So anyway, Sri Lanka's Stargate. In the historic city of Anuradhapura in Sri Lanka, there is a star chart-like carving in the middle of a park. The park, known as Ranmasu Uyana, is a 40-acre park in the middle of this town. There are 3 Buddhist temples in this park that surround this area where this star chart-like thing is. Now, this chart is also known as the Universe Cycle carving in Sri Lanka, and it measures like 1.8 meters in diameter. Now, in front of this chart, there are 4 seats carved into the ground, basically, that are literally perfectly made for viewing this thing. This star chart is full of like concentric circles and horizontal and vertical lines. It's all divided up. It's really, really cool looking. Now, based on Buddhist traditions and just understanding of the people that probably carved this thing's most likely representative of the earth, the seas, outer space, and the universe as a whole. That's where all these online theories about it being a Stargate come from. A lot of people that are most likely fringe theorists, kind of like myself, just really think that this thing allows for interface between a human species and the aliens. Now, who these aliens are, we don't know. But yeah, it's like either a portal or something that humans can talk to aliens can come to our world from, or they can just talk to them through this somehow. I don't know. There's obviously no evidence to think that this thing would be an interface between humans and an alien species, but it could be. Who knows? Mustang Caves. The Mustang Caves, or the Sky Caves of Nepal, are quite literally that. They're a collection of over 10,000 man-made caves high off the valley floor of Nepal in the Mustang district. We don't know exactly who carved these caves into the sides of these valleys, but we do know that there are partially mummified bodies in there that are up to 3,000 years old. There's also a lot of Buddhist artifacts and scrolls and stuff like that in there from like the 12th to 14th century, so like that's AD times. Now, this place was formerly known as the Kingdom of Lo. That was before Nepal itself annexed it in like the 18th century. That means that the people that carved these caves were probably the ancestors of the Kingdom of Lo's people. These caves actually have 3 different eras of occupation. So the first one was way back in the day, like 1000 BC or something like that. Way back then, they used it for human burials. About 1500 years later, from the 3rd century AD through the 8th century AD, they were using this for burials as well, but it was Buddhist sky burials. And then finally in the 10th century AD, they were using these caves as like actual occupation areas, like they were hiding from the government, stuff like that. Then and from then on is whenever all that Buddhist stuff was probably placed in there. From the looks of these Buddhist artifacts, it might have been used as like meditation chambers or something like that, because that would just make sense with Buddhist monks living in the area. To this day, these caves are legendary, especially to the people that live in the area, because it was their ancestors that carved them tens of thousands of years ago, or however long ago it was. At least 3,000 years ago, but people speculate that they were carved like 14,000 years ago. It would be awesome to go there and look at them myself, but that probably will never happen. But anyway, Maiherpri. Maiherpri was an ancient Egyptian noble that was probably probably of Nubian descent. This means that he was of Nubian origin, which is like southern Egypt and northern Sudan, that area, that region. The most important part is that he had dark skin. He was the only known Egyptian noble that was buried in the Valley of the Kings, which is like the royal necropolis. But anyway, he was the only one that had dark skin. He was buried in KV 36. His name literally translates to the Lion of the Battlefield. He had some more titles that we found in his tomb, like Child of the Nursery and also Fan Bearer on the right side of the king, which is random. All this stuff leads to speculation that he might have been born in the royal nursery. He was part of like a exchange or something from Nubian nobles or something like that. He might have been a prince. He might have been from like a concubine wife of the pharaoh of the time, and he actually had darker skin because that concubine had darker skin. We really don't know. The fact that he had that fan bearer on the right side of the king title means that he probably served as like a vassal to the king or something like that. His mummy was very well preserved. It was found in 1901, and his face was so well preserved that whenever they found it, they saw that he had just had like a peaceful expression on his face. It's the complete opposite of the screaming mummy, that's for sure. All right, so he had that Lion of the Battlefield title as well, which means that he might have been like a very powerful dude in the military, and this would make sense because ancient Egyptian pharaohs and stuff, they would recruit Nubian archers that were really good at that, I guess. And they also had some that served as fan bearers in their hieroglyphs that we see to this day and study. All this pretty much paints a picture of what this guy's life was like. We actually don't know how this guy died because if we go in there and examine his body, it'll probably just disintegrate the mummy, so we haven't done that yet. But one of these days we'll find out how he died, if he was powerful in the military or something. We just don't know right now. I bet he definitely had an interesting story though, because all of this stuff it's pretty cool. Fuxian Lake underwater carvings. In 2006, researchers began an underwater investigation of Fuxian Lake in China. What they found was a massive group of huge buildings underneath the water. They found lots of big stones with very mysterious carvings. We might know where these buildings came from and who actually built them. Chinese legend says that there was an ancient city right here on top of this lake that eventually sank in there, but anyway, it was back during the Western Han Dynasty. This would have been somewhere between 200 BC and the start of the AD period. This city's recorded in the historical records up until like 500 AD, so it was there. It was known as Yuhuan City, and it sank to the bottom of this lake around that time. There were these carvings, but there were also tons of artifacts and just tons of stuff that symbolized this ancient civilization. I say ancient, it wasn't that long ago, I guess. This entire site of this lake covers somewhere between 2 and 3 square kilometers, which is a lot. Now, these carvings are just as the title of this entry says. They were very mysterious. Some of them seem to represent the sun and the moon. Some of them represent some sort of trigram symbol. Some of them represent like male and female genitalia, which is weird, but anyway. It said that one of these formations underneath this lake resemble an ancient pyramid, so they literally look like the Egyptian pyramids. I don't know how true that is or not, because this is Chinese studies, and China and information, they don't really crosswire, you know. Anyway, because of that lack of information getting out, the information from China is just not that good. We don't know that much more about these carvings. I wish we did, and one day we probably will, but it might not be in our time, but here we are. If you want to learn about some more ancient mysteries that we haven't mentioned in this video, you might as well check out the Complete Ancient Mysteries Iceberg V1. It'll be linked on screen right here. It's like 3 hours worth of this stuff right here. Check it out and subscribe for more. I'll be on this grind for the rest of my life probably. Until the next one, peace.